My name's Chris Mitchell, and I'm going to talk to you about the cryptographic revolution that's being caused by the threat of quantum computing. I'm terribly sorry I can't be with you at the conference. I recently discovered that I have COVID-19, and obviously it's best if I stay fairly isolated, so I'm recording this from my office at home. So these are the topics I want to cover. I'll start by briefly introducing public key cryptography, which is at the core of the issue that I want to talk about. The impact of quantum computing on public key cryptography. Then, what are the priorities in dealing with this problem? What is actually happening? And how will it affect all of us? And will such things happen again? Perhaps a different kind of computing or some other revolution to cause the upset that's being caused right now by the possibility of large-scale quantum computing. Okay, so let's talk briefly about public key cryptography. As far as the public domain is concerned anyway, the idea of public key cryptography dates back 50 years to a paper by Whit, Diffie and Martin Hellman, published in 1976, called New Directions in Cryptography. And, by the way, I'd strongly recommend reading this paper. It's an example of an extremely well written paper, full of fascinating ideas, that remains worth reading even 50 years on. The paper introduces two major innovations: the notion of public key cryptography and a specific public key technique called, well, the paper doesn't call it, but the world has since called it, the Diffie-Hellman key agreement method. This paper stimulated three other leading researchers, Ron Rivas, Adi Shamir and Len Adelman, to develop something called RSA, which was the first practical public key encryption scheme that can also be used to build digital signatures. An interesting side note is that all of this was developed in parallel but in secret at a government research agency, something that only came out some decades later. So what is public key cryptography? Well, we've had conventional or symmetric or secret key cryptography for a long time, thousands of years in fact. Conventional cryptography relies on shared secret keys. So the idea being, if I want to send you secret messages through an insecure channel, before we part, obviously if I'm next to you I can just talk to you directly, so I don't need cryptography, but before we part we agree on the algorithm we're going to use, and we agree on a secret key. And when we're apart and I want to send you a secret message, I take the message, I encrypt it using the secret key with the agreed algorithm, send it through this channel which we don't really trust. When you receive it, you decrypt the message with the same secret key and recover the original message. In encrypted form, the message cannot be read by anybody. In a public key scheme, it's different. Keys come in pairs. You have a public key, which can be made public, and a private key which you have to keep secret. So key pairs are personal. You have your own key pair. You might have several. So how do we use the keys? Well, it depends on the type of scheme. In an encryption scheme, you use the public key for encryption and you use the private key for decryption. So if you want to send me a secret message, you find my public key by some method. It might be published. You encrypt the message using my public key, and then you send me the message, and I'm the only one that can decrypt it, because I'm the only one that has the matching private key. In a similar way, digital signatures, which function a little like conventional signatures, you need the private key to create the digital signature on a message that you want to sign, and the public key can be used to verify that the signature is correct and is indeed the signature of the person that it claims to be. And there's also key agreement schemes which are used to set up shared secrets for use with conventional cryptography. Now, public key encryption is not used for large-scale data encryption. Even with the best techniques we have today, it's very much slower and less efficient than conventional crypto. So what we typically use it for is to encrypt a secret key. So I send you an encrypted secret key using public key cryptography, and then I use that secret key to encrypt potentially long message using conventional cryptography. And the method we use to encrypt secret keys is what's known as a KEM, or key encapsulation mechanism. Now, over the last 30 years or so, two particular classes of public key crypto system have become dominant in the marketplace. RSA, which is used for both encryption, a common KEM, key encapsulation method, created using RSA, is known as RSA KEM, and also for digital signatures. There are also what are known as discrete logarithm-based schemes that are used in a wide variety of ways. It's used for signatures in the DSA, digital signature algorithm, in what's known as ECDSA, which stands for elliptic curve DSA, in a KEM known as ECIS KEM, ECIES KEM, and some other KEMs, and also for key agreement. So these two classes of public key crypto system are very widely used and dominate. Their security depends on unproven assumptions about the difficulty of certain problems, the computational difficulty. The security of RSA rests on the difficulty of factorizing large numbers, and the security of discrete log schemes relies on the difficulty of computing logarithms in a chosen group. And there's two typical groups used: the multiplicative group of a finite field, or the group of points on an elliptic curve. Don't worry if you don't really understand the details of this. It's not vital for this presentation. Today we use crypto almost everywhere, and in particular we use public key. TLS for browser server interactions. We use full disk encryption and many other cryptographic services in modern operating systems. We use crypto in things like passports, identity tokens. We use it to protect the security of card payments, and software updates are typically protected using digital signatures so that the recipient of a software update can check that it's valid. Of course, this all happens transparently to us. So public key is really important, and if you get the algorithm wrong, or if you use public key or any crypto incorrectly, you can be in serious trouble. So what about quantum computing? Well, I first should say that there's still no universal agreement that large-scale general-purpose quantum computers will ever be built. There's a very interesting article from a few years ago in IEEE Spectrum that questions this. But on the other hand, it's fair to say that every year progress is made with systems incorporating larger numbers of qubits, which are the quantum bits, the unit of information in a quantum computer. And apparently the current record is about 1,000 qubits, which is a lot more than was the case a few years ago. And here's a picture I found on the internet about, I think, an IBM quantum computer. We don't know how powerful they're going to be when they arrive. However, we can write algorithms for quantum computers like we write algorithms for conventional computers, and we can, based on these algorithms, estimate how complex certain computations are. And there's two particularly important algorithms that are designed to run on quantum computers that affect crypto. Shor's algorithm from 30 years ago greatly simplifies two key problems. That is, factorizing large integers and computing discrete logarithms in elliptic curve or finite field multiplicative groups. And those are the two key problems that today's public key crypto relies on for their security. When I say the problems that the algorithms rely on, the algorithms rely on the difficulty of these problems. to remain secure. If these problems become easy, then the crypto can be easily broken. Basically what it means for public key cryptography is that you can discover the private key from the public key, and that means you can decrypt everything and forge signatures and do all kinds of horrible stuff. So, if anybody starts building, or if anybody builds a large-scale quantum computer, all of today's public key cryptography is broken. That sounds a bit dangerous and worrying, and yes it is. There's also something known as Grover's algorithm, which actually threatens symmetric cryptography or conventional cryptography. But actually, it's not a particularly large threat. If we just make our keys a little bit longer, we're safe. And indeed, currently used key length still seems safe for the time being. So, I think the big message is conventional cryptography is essentially fine. Public key cryptography, real big problems. So in the long term, we may need to move to larger keys for symmetric cryptography, but for the moment 128-bit keys look to be secure. So no need to panic. But we need new algorithms for public key cryptography. So, what are the priorities in replacing these algorithms? Well, for most digital signature applications, a just-in-time approach is enough. What do I mean by just-in-time? Well, in most applications, we create signatures, verify them, and then discard them, all within a short period of time. So as long as we replace the digital signature algorithms the day before quantum computers come online, we're okay, because we can immediately switch to using the new algorithms. I know it's not as simple as that, but in principle that's the case. There are applications where signatures have a longer lifetime, so it does mean we need to we need to update our signature algorithms. We can't just be very relaxed about it, but it's not such a high priority as encryption or key establishment. Because if I record data, encrypted data now, where the key has been established using public key cryptography, then I can just wait until I have a quantum computer. Then I can break the cryptography and decrypt the data. So anything I encrypt now using public key cryptography will be decryptable as soon as a suitable quantum computer is available. Now, a lot of the secrets we encrypt today will still be secret in a few years' time. To take a trivial example, think about payments. Think about your PIN that might be encrypted and sent around the network. You've probably been using the same PIN with your credit card for several years. So it remains a secret. Now, of course, there are many other cases where that's a problem. So you can be sure that many major players, such as nation states, are busy recording any interesting encrypted material. So, if we're using crypto, if we're using public key crypto, we need to very quickly review our security and think about the impact if a quantum computer is built tomorrow. And these are the things we need to think about. And one of the issues, of course, is legacy. Replacing technology throughout a very large and complex system can take years. So, for example, the example I've given here is credit and debit cards have a lifetime of 3 to 5 years typically. So replacing all cards could take a long time, let alone all the supporting infrastructure. So I think it's fair to say that for the large-scale, high-value systems, reviews have been done and there are plans in place. But I'm much less confident about smaller companies, smaller systems, particularly in less affluent parts of the world. And I don't see any major government-inspired pushes to start replacing vulnerable systems. So what's happening? Well, academia and leading industry players have been busy trying to develop new public key crypto schemes. As you can imagine, We were faced with this threat several years ago, so we've had time to think about it. We obviously need new kinds of cryptography, and there was nothing available off the shelf 10 or 15 years ago. That is, we had RSA, we had the discrete log schemes, and they were very widely used, but if we wanted to replace them overnight, there was nothing that we could put there that was really practical. There were some schemes, but they tended to have very long keys and or require an enormous amount of computation to implement. But I'm pleased to say we've made a lot of progress in developing new algorithms that are both secure as far as we know against quantum computers and also conventional computers, and are much more practical. I say we, not so much me personally, but the cryptographic community, primarily in academia, but also in leading companies. And at the same time, standardization bodies such as the US NIST and ISO and IEC are working on new standards for algorithms. Okay, there had to be a bit of a delay till the algorithms were there to be standardized, but I think we've got to the point now where we have good candidate algorithms and we are in the process of standardizing them. And once they're standardized, or even perhaps before they're standardized, we can start to roll them out on a large scale. We often refer to post-quantum or quantum-safe algorithms to mean algorithms that will remain secure even after what one might call the quantum apocalypse, if you're being very dramatic about it. The NIST Post-Quantum Crypto Standardization Competition was announced 8 years ago with the idea of working with the academic community and industry to try to come up with the best candidates for replacing current public key cryptography. There have been a number of conferences, huge amounts written. Now we have 3 draft standards. Draft FIPS 203, containing 3 variants of something called Crystal's Kyber, which was just one of the many algorithms put forward. And they're chems, they're encryption schemes. We have draft FIPS 204, which contains MLDSA, which is a signature algorithm based on something called Crystal's dilithium. Cryptographers do tend to love these rather grandiose names, but there we are. And draft FIPS 205 contains something called SLH-DSA, which is another signature algorithm based on a different scheme called Sphinx Plus. And it's fully expected by the community that these standards will be finalised very shortly. The difficult computational problem on which the security of most of these schemes rests is called the module learning with errors problem, which is a special case of the learning with errors problem. I won't attempt to explain what this is about, but the idea is that you hide a secret by introducing noise, hence the learning with errors, and then you have to deduce a function from some evaluations of the function. So you're given the inputs and you're given the output, and you have to work out what the function is. The problem is some of the outputs may be wrong. And it's believed that this is a difficult problem, computationally hard, even if you have a quantum computer. The other scheme that's in the NIST draft standards, SLH-DSA, is very different. It's based on something called a cryptographic hash function, which is a very widely used piece of conventional cryptography. So you basically take this hash function and use it in a special way, which makes it into a public key crypto system. So it's good that we have 2 completely different approaches to developing these new algorithms, so that if for some reason one approach turns out to be flawed, we have an alternative. ETSI, the European Telecom Standards Institution, launched its own quantum safe crypto working group back in 2013. And they've run a series of very helpful annual conferences and published a white paper. ISO-IEC, in particular SE27 Working Group 2, which is responsible for crypto standardization, is currently working on an amendment to its public key encryption standard to add several quantum safe algorithms. It's adding 2 of the 3 schemes that are being adopted by NIST, so it's following NIST in that respect, but it's also adding 2 different schemes to give a variety of options. Something called Frodo Chem, which also is based on the learning with errors problem, and a variant of the McLeese crypto system. Now, interestingly, the McLeese crypto system is nearly as old as RSA, but was never seriously proposed for use because it had very large keys and wasn't regarded as terribly practical. But it's been tweaked and modified over the years, and although it's still rather computationally difficult, it's not as efficient as the other schemes around, it's widely believed to be secure. So I think a lot of people have great confidence in the McLeese system and are perhaps more comfortable using it than the more recently devised schemes. Now, there's been a lot of controversy within ISO about including any of the NIST schemes, the Crystals Kyber schemes. I mentioned that we've agreed, as I put on the previous slide, the current draft of the updated standard, the ISO standard, includes 2 of the 3 ML-Chem variants adopted by NIST. Now, including any of these variants in the standard caused a lot of discussion because they're slightly tweaked versions of Crystals Kyber. And this tweaking only occurred relatively recently. And nobody knows of any reason why this should cause a problem. But there's a lot of suspicion of NIST because NIST has promoted schemes in the past, not encryption schemes, but key generation schemes, which it turns out appeared to have been tweaked in such a way that it might have allowed the US government to break schemes. So there's this slight suspicion that NIST might be acting as an agent of the US government and that maybe these schemes aren't quite as secure as we might hope. But I think this is rather unlikely personally, that there is a problem. But say I mentioned that there is this suspicion. And I mentioned already that the other 2 ISO adopted algorithms are less efficient. ISO is also standardizing post-quantum signatures. There's something called ISO-IEC 14888-4, which is about to be published, which contains several post-quantum signature schemes, which are also based on hash functions like SDLH DSA, but they're distinct. And it's also likely that ISO will pick up the NIST-specified signature schemes, although there is less urgency here. But it needs to be done. So, despite the difficulties, it seems we now have the cryptographic tools we need for a secure post-quantum future. Although they're all a bit less easy to use than the schemes they replace, which is rather a shame. But there's a lot of work to be done. We need to update all our standards to include these new schemes. We need to update the infrastructure that builds on these standards. It's a heck of a task. I hate to think how much it's going to cost. So, are we ready for the quantum apocalypse right now? Of course not. We're still only standardizing replacement algorithms, let alone replacing all the infrastructure. There are no quantum secure TLS cipher suites available by default in Windows 10, or at least there weren't when I checked last, which was only a few days ago. There is hope that we'll mostly be ready. How much notice will we have? Well, it's difficult to know when somebody actually completes a large-scale quantum computer. Indeed, if it's a nation state, are they going to tell anyone? Might they just not build as many as they can and keep it very quiet? Because it will give them a major technological advantage. And my guess is 5 years or so. But clearly the threat from hostile nation states and organised crime is clear. And you can be sure that governments are thinking very hard about this behind the scenes. But say, upgrading systems is very difficult. We have this legacy issue. We need to replace our entire infrastructure until we can start using new protocols or algorithms. We can replace the infrastructure piecemeal because we can include elements that support new schemes and old schemes. But until all the infrastructure has been replaced, we can't easily start using the new schemes because the old parts of the infrastructure may break. So this makes the whole thing very complex and expensive. Is there the will to change? Well, I suppose part of the reason of giving this talk, apart from the entertainment value, is to try to let everybody know that there is a big potential problem out there and we need to do something about it. We can't just ignore it and hope it's going to go away. Because, and one of the things that worries me is historically companies are very reluctant to spend money on security unless something bad happens. And waiting until something bad happens is not a good idea. I guess the other question that you might have is, okay, we've been using a certain kind of cryptography for a long time. This new technology, in this case quantum computers, comes along and it upturns everything. It means we have to replace all our cryptography. Can it happen again? Well, all the crypto we use, 99.9% of the crypto that we use, relies on the difficulty of certain computational problems. So if we can find a new way of making these apparently hard problems easy, then we have a problem. That's why quantum computers are causing the security world so much trouble, because it turns out that two of the problems that we hoped were very difficult will suddenly become easy. But there's lots of other problems out there that still look to be hard. For example, if P turns out to equal NP, which seems very unlikely, then almost all cryptography we use would be in trouble. But even a lesser breakthrough could cause a major upheaval. I don't think it's terribly likely it's going to happen anytime soon, but there are no guarantees. So on the one hand, the quantum computing issue is a warning, but none of the other assumptions we've been relying on about computational problems have been overturned. And we've been relying on these for decades. So maybe this is a one-off. No need to panic, but do something about it. So is quantum computing a curse or a blessing? Well, it's certainly costing a lot of money to develop it, and we're having to spend a lot of money to prepare for it. And it's yet to deliver any major benefits. Finally, will we be ready? Well, sadly, probably not. But I hope that at least we'll be mostly ready. And thank you very much for listening to this talk. If you have any questions, by all means drop me an email and I'll try to answer them. And apologies again for not being with you at the conference. So thank you.